The FCDO has rightly apologised for the unjust ban on LGBT plus officers serving in the diplomatic service prior to 1991. The department is also actively monitoring the outcomes of the Atherton report, the effectiveness and the lessons learned, and that those could be learned for our organisation. And may I say, I know the Noble Lady's interest in this. I'll, of course, follow up directly with the Noble Lady as we make progress in this respect.
My Lords, I know the MOD... I'm sorry, I beg...
I thank the Noble Minister for that, because many years ago, my former colleague, a rather brilliant Gareth Williams, was a high-flying diplomat, but he was dismissed from the service the very moment he revealed to them that he was gay. No future, no career, no apology, and no debate. And a great loss to the country, which therefore couldn't use the services of this very talented man. After my noble friend Lord Collins raised this with the Minister, he did take action on this, and we got the very welcome apology to which he's referred and is written there. The problem is that that wasn't even sent to my friend Gareth Williams, but it hasn't been sent, of course, to all the other people that were dismissed from the Foreign Office, and there's been no attempt to identify who was dismissed, even to have the apology before anything else. So I do ask that maybe we could look through the records and see who else lost their job, and at least make them aware of the apology for the ban on LGBT people working in the diplomatic service.
Of course, that's a very pragmatic and practical suggestion which we'll take forward, but I assure the Noble Lady we're doing exactly that. We're working with the sensitivity that's required. And as part of the modernising the FCDO for the diversity of our workforce today, the Noble Lady would have noticed my written ministerial statement issued at the start of this month, looking at issues of accreditation for the kind of diverse families that are now involved and rightly celebrated within the FCDO.
My Lords, my apologies to the Noble Baroness Lady Hayter. I know that the MOD found immensely helpful the report from the Noble and Learned Lord Atherton, and we were indebted to him for his excellent independent review. I've also had the privilege of working with my noble friend, the Minister, closely on a number of issues. This is complex, it is sensitive, and might I suggest that it would be a useful collaboration for the two departments to consider how they might work together and share experience.
Over many years, I've learned one thing, amongst others, is to listen to my noble friend very closely, and of course we will take that forward, but I assure her, notwithstanding her departure from the Ministry of Defence, we continue to work very closely across the two departments.
Still extraordinary to think that this ban had ever been in place in the first place, but when it comes to currently the situation is that many LGBT staff for the FCDO work in very complex and indeed hostile environments in their postings, regrettably all too many in Commonwealth countries. Will the Minister agree with me that perhaps there had been a practice within the FCDO to suggest that LGBT staff should not apply to these postings, and indeed that would cause complications potentially with visa applications and housing support. But there has been a very welcome cultural shift within the FCDO to ensure that postings facilitate LGBT staff to work in complex environments and then to support them. So I hope the Minister will agree with me that this is a cultural shift which is long overdue but very welcome. And would he agree with me that this is important for local recruited staff also in those countries?
I do agree with the Noble Lord, and I assure him certainly in my time at the Foreign Office as a Joint Minister and at the FCDO, we've made great strides forward, and I really recognise the importance of the recent announcement we've made, again, both to facilitate and to demonstrate quite directly that this is a modern department dealing with complex issues in the world, but equally we're proud of all our diplomatic staff.
My Lords, I welcome this question, which deals with an issue that some of us in this House have been working on for decades, and indeed I was privileged to work with Baroness Goldie on widening this issue into the armed forces. Might I suggest to the Noble Lord the Minister, it's always good to see him at the dispatch box on this issue, that perhaps he encourage the Noble and Learned Lord Atherton to look at his report and see how it can be widened to deal with the diplomatic and intelligence services, and indeed perhaps look at the Canadian model, where the Canadian government has looked at equality of treatment for those in service to the government. And I believe, my Lords, it does serve as an excellent model.
May I begin by actually paying tribute to the Noble Lord for his work in this area, and that of my noble friend Lord Lexton as well, in what's been done in this space. And if I may also acknowledge the Noble Lord Collins on the front bench, because we have worked closely on this particular issue. Of course, I will take forward the suggestion and working with other key partners. The recommendations of the report I have gone through. Of those, I know the MOD have already implemented over, or just about half of them. I think they're looking very much seized on recommending the financial reward element, which I think is important, which has been acknowledged as a principle. And of course, the two departments, we want to see what can be learned from that. Different ways of working, but I'm sure there are crossovers, and those are being looked at actively as I speak.
The Minister agree that there is a distinct difference between the Ministry of Defence and the FCDO. Service records and reasons for dismissal were usually matters of public knowledge and public record and known to friends and family. That's not always the case in employment in the FCDO and the intelligence services. So does he agree with me that there is therefore an increased onus on the department to actively go and seek out people who may well have been victims of this policy to make sure that they are aware of remedies and apologies that are, to which they may be entitled?
My Lords, I note what the Noble Lady has said, and as the Noble Lady Baroness Hayter also pointed out, it's important that we're proactive but also sensitive in our approach, and I assure the Noble Lady that that's exactly the approach of the FCDO, led by the Permanent Under-Secretary in this respect.
My Lords, I draw attention to my entry in the register as Chair of the Global Equality Caucus and the Prime Minister's Special Envoy on LGBT rights. The fact that people can now serve openly, regardless of their sexual orientation, throughout the diplomatic service, including at senior rank, with a number of ambassadors representing our country, is obviously an immensely important step forward. Nevertheless, is it not the case that there are still a number of countries where it would be very difficult for members of our diplomatic service to be open about their sexual orientation, particularly at senior level? And that is a sign of the polarised world which we increasingly find ourselves in. Will my noble friend assure me that the government will continue to take all possible steps to promote LGBT+ rights wherever possible, particularly take action in countries where those rights are being reversed?
First of all, again, I acknowledge my noble friend's important work as the Special Envoy for LGBT+ rights on behalf of the FCDO, and I very much welcomed his direct participation. He rightly raises the issue about countries around the world. There's about 65 countries. The Noble Lord has also alluded to this, 31 of which then are in the Commonwealth. We have taken a practical approach. The Noble Lord Collins will remember that during the premiership of my right honourable friend Theresa May, we took specific steps on allocating finance and then working quite sensitively on, for example, legislative reform to see how progress can be made, and that focus continues.
My Lords, I do deeply appreciate what the Noble Lord has done, particularly when we first raised this issue. But one of the things that his department can do, and I know has been doing, is actually raise awareness through active civil society and supporting civil society so that the conditions that our diplomats face, and I know that in certainly Balkan countries, our ambassadors have been proactive in inviting civil society in to make sure that they're defended and can be vibrant. Can he reassure me that we will continue to do this work and work with the APPG that the Noble Lord has just referred to?
I can give the Noble Lord that assurance. We work in very practical terms through inviting to particular events. The Noble Lord will appreciate, I know, the sensitivity of certain countries where even meeting with visiting ministers is a challenge to those civil society representatives. So we're often conscious not to publicise those meetings but work constructively with them, and we'll continue to do so. I think the important issue here is that we see progress. There has been regression, as my noble friend Lord Herbert also pointed out, that we stand forth and actually represent the rights of all communities, all people, everywhere, but do so in a way which sees practical progress to their rights.
My Lord, since as a result of Noble and Learned Lord Everton's superb review, compensation will be made available for LGBT veterans who suffered so severely the effects of injustice. Should not compensation also be considered in relation to these other loyal servants of the Crown whose happiness was destroyed and careers ruined as a result of similar injustice?
My Lords, again, acknowledging my noble friend's work in this area, I recognise the point he's raised. He will know I can't make that commitment at this point, but I assure him we are looking at the noble and learned Lord's recommendations very carefully for the crossover application and what more can be done.